Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of like absolute precision. It's almost like engineering.
Right. It's very binary.
Exactly. You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line on the radius bone, and the doctor just points to the screen and says, well, there it is. That's the problem.
You put a cast on it, and the path to healing is just mapped out in universally understood biological terms. It's comforting, really.
It is. We naturally gravitate toward things that can be made visible, things we can categorize and just fix with a standard procedure.
But then you step into the world of human psychology.
Oh, completely. You step into the landscape of families, of marriages, of these really deep-seated resentments, and suddenly that x-ray machine is just completely useless.
Yeah, we're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky.
And it brings to mind what is arguably one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature. All happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way.
I mean, it is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. That line, of course, is Leo Tolstoy opening the door to his masterpiece, Anna Karenina.
Right, which was published back in 1877.
Yes. And what is so incredibly striking about that opening is that Tolstoy isn't just making a casual, witty observation about domestic life.
He's laying down a philosophical gauntlet right on page 1.
Exactly. He's challenging us to look at the unique, highly individualized, and often terrifying architecture of human suffering.
Which is heavy, right from the jump.
It is. He's telling us that happiness is a delicate equilibrium. It's a state where all the complex gears of a family are perfectly aligned. But unhappiness is entropy. Right. It can break down in a million different, highly specific ways.
So we need to unpack this immediately, because if you are listening to this right now and thinking, uh-oh, we're about to just summarize a 19th century Russian soap opera, let me stop you there.
Yeah, please stick around.
We are not here to just gossip about who is having an affair with whom in St. Petersburg high society. This deep dive into the material is about breaking down Anna Karenina as a profound philosophical and psychological text.
Which it absolutely is.
Our mission today is to uncover Tolstoy's deeply intense inquiry into the meaning of life. We're looking at the brutal clash between our personal desires and our social duties.
And the frankly terrifying weight of societal expectations.
So to truly grasp what Tolstoy is doing mechanically within this text, we have to pull back first. We need to look at the massive historical and philosophical canvas he was painting on.
Right, because context is everything here. He wrote this novel in installments between 1873 and 1877.
And Russia at that exact moment was undergoing a completely seismic ideological transition.
Yes, we actually have to rewind just a bit to 1861. That was the emancipation of the serfs.
Right. Tsar Alexander II abolishes serfdom, which completely upends the entire agrarian economy and the social order just overnight.
It's hard for modern minds to really overstate how massive this was.
It would be like completely eliminating the concept of wage labor tomorrow. Just boom, gone.
Exactly. For centuries, the Russian aristocracy had their identities, their wealth, their daily routines built entirely on the backs of unfree peasant labor.
And suddenly, that foundation is gone.
It's just gone.
Yep.
So the aristocracy was thrust into a state of profound crisis. They were losing their traditional meaning and their unquestioned authority.
And into this massive cultural vacuum, you had a flood of Western liberal ideas pouring in, right?
Yeah, scientific and industrial ideas, railways, banking, European rationalism. And all of that was clashing violently with the traditional, rural, and deeply mystical roots of Russian identity.
So the country was basically being torn between two worlds.
Completely.
Yeah.
You had an old aristocratic world based on rigid hierarchies, desperately trying to survive in a new, hyper-fast, uncertain modern world.
So what does this all actually mean for the characters in the book? It means they aren't just people in a story going about their day.
No, they are walking, talking philosophical avatars.
Right. They represent a country, and honestly, the human soul experiencing a severe identity crisis.
The core question Tolstoy is asking through these people is so profound. Are we supposed to live according to the cold, rational demands of a changing society?
Or do we live according to what our irrational heart and our moral conscience demand?
That is the central tension of the whole book. And to explore that tension, Tolstoy employs a very specific literary philosophy, realism.
Now, let's clarify that, because when we say realism in a literary context, we aren't just talking about a writer describing the velvet curtains or the mud on a carriage wheel with, photographic accuracy.
No, not at all. Realism as a philosophical stance is a fundamental rejection of the ideal.
Let's drill into that for a second, because Fyodor Dostoevsky, who is obviously a titan of psychology and literature himself, he called Anna Karenina flawless perfection.
Which is high praise coming from him.
Seriously, and why did he say that? Because Tolstoy absolutely refuses to give us the comfort of a fairy tale.
Right. There are no perfect heroes here.
And there are no mustache-twirling villains either.
And that is a radical departure from the classical traditions of tragedy. I mean, think about the Greeks or Shakespeare.
Where you have the fatal flaw?
Exactly. In traditional tragedies, you have a noble, almost perfect hero who possesses one fatal flaw: hubris, jealousy, ambition.
And that single flaw brings down the otherwise perfect machine of their life.
But Tolstoy's realism dictates that this is simply not how human beings actually operate. Humans are entirely, exhaustingly complex.
We don't have one fatal flaw. We have like dozens of minor flaws that interact in totally unpredictable ways.
Yes. Every single character is a bundle of contradictions.
And we see this immediately, right in the opening scenes of the novel. Long before we even meet Anna, we are introduced to her brother's family, the Oblonsky household.
Which is just a mess.
Oh, it's a total catastrophic domestic crisis. We open on Stiva Oblonsky, who has been caught having an affair with the family's French governess.
Yeah, his wife Donnelly has discovered the note.
She is in absolute despair, locked in her rooms, refusing to speak to him. The kids are running wild through the house. The English nanny is threatening to quit.
The cook has already left. It is pure chaos.
It is literally the unhappy family from the opening line manifested physically.
It is. And here is where Tolstoy drops his first major philosophical critique of society. Because Stiva is not portrayed as a monster.
Right, which makes it so interesting.
But the way society reacts to Stiva's infidelity reveals this staggering hypocrisy.
The social philosophy of 19th century Russian high society dictates that male transgressions, especially affairs, are essentially expected.
They are treated with a sort of boys will be boys wink.
Stiva goes to his club, and his friends basically tell him, hey, tough break getting caught, but it happens to the best of us.
But female transgressions, as we will see very clearly with Anne later, they are punished with total, absolute social annihilation.
I want to look closely at Stiva himself for a minute, because Tolstoy doesn't just write him off as a malicious villain, and that is what makes the psychology here so brilliant.
He's actually very likable on the surface.
Yes. Stiva isn't actively trying to cause pain. He actually reminds me of the modern concept of toxic positivity.
Oh, that's an interesting way to look at it.
You know what I mean? Have you ever worked with someone who is undeniably charming, always brings donuts to the office, avoids any and all awkward conversations,
and just insists that everyone needs to be happy and have a good time?
Exactly. But because that person has absolutely zero moral anchor, they end up destroying the peace of everyone around them. That's Stiva Oblonsky.
He doesn't want to hurt his wife. He just fundamentally, on a cellular level, refuses to be uncomfortable.
That is a brilliant psychological comparison.
Stiva's underlying philosophy is pure hedonism masked as affability. He believes that life is meant to be enjoyed, period.
He loves a good meal, a beautiful woman, a comfortable chair.
Right. And when his enjoyment causes immense suffering to his wife, he simply brushes it away. He's just hoping it will resolve itself so he can go back to being comfortable.
He lacks the capacity for deep moral reflection.
Completely. And this brings us to a crucial aspect of Tolstoy's method. He drives his narrative not through explosive plot twists or melodramatic monologues, but through meticulous character psychology.
It's this slow psychological unspooling. It's not a thriller where you are waiting to see who gets murdered.
No, it's a thriller where you're waiting to see how a character justifies their own terrible decisions to themselves.
Exactly. And the mechanism Tolstoy uses to achieve this is a very specific, highly structured form of stream of consciousness.
Which is different from what we usually think of when we hear that term.
Right. When modern readers think of stream of consciousness, we usually think of early 20th century writers like Virginia Woolf or James Joyce.
Where the internal monologue is deliberately fragmented. It mimics the chaotic, disjointed, associative dream state of the human mind.
But Tolstoy's internal monologues are entirely different. They are deeply logical and structurally coherent.
He shows us the exact step-by-step cognitive process of how a character rationalizes their behavior. We watch them lie to themselves.
And we see the precise moment their internal philosophy unravels under pressure. We are inside their minds, basically watching the gears slip.
So society easily forgives Stiva for his indiscretions because he's a man and because he keeps things light and superficial.
But what happens to the person who sees that exact same hypocrisy and instead of brushing it off, plunges straight into the fire?
That's the core tragedy.
Let's transition to the central tragic figure of the novel. How does a woman go from being the moral peacemaker of her family? Because remember, Anna is the one who comes to Moscow to convince Dolly to forgive Steva.
Right, she starts as the mediator.
Exactly. How does she go from that to losing absolutely everything? Let's talk about the Anna axis.
Anna Karenina. The aesthetic picture Tolstoy paints of her is vital to understanding her psychological weight.
He was heavily inspired by Maria Pushkina, right? The daughter of the great Russian poet Alexander Pushkin.
Yes, he was. And when we first meet Anna, she is not described as a delicate, fragile flower.
No, Tolstoy gives her striking, vital details. Gray eyes that seem to hide a suppressed fire, thick eyebrows, dark curly hair that constantly escapes its pins.
Full lips, marble-like shoulders. She possesses a life force, a beauty that is almost terrifying in its magnetic pull.
But the core tension here is that this incredible external vitality masks a profound inner emptiness.
Because of her marriage.
Right. When we meet her, she has been married for years to Alexei Karenin. And Karenin is, well, if Anna is a raging fire, Karenin is a terms of service agreement.
Oh, that is the perfect way to describe him. A terms of service agreement.
He is a senior government bureaucrat. He views morality the exact same way a corporate lawyer views a contract.
As long as you do not violate the clauses publicly, you are entirely quote-unquote good.
Yes. He cares infinitely more about social honor, state appearances, and the widget letter of the law than he does about emotional connection. Or the spirit of the law, for that matter.
That analogy hits the nail on the head. Karenin represents the rigid, emotionless, bureaucratic structures of the Russian state.
He doesn't love Anna in any passionate human sense.
No, he values her as an appropriate, beautiful accessory to his political career. He is a man who literally schedules his affection.
And into this massive emotional void steps Count Vronsky.
Vronsky is a young, fabulously wealthy, handsome, ambitious military officer.
And the chemistry between them is immediate, undeniable, and entirely destructive.
But we have to make a really important distinction here, because it's easy to misread this book.
Yeah, let's be clear about what Tolstoy is actually saying.
Tolstoy is not acting as a strict, prudish moralist, simply condemning the concept of love or physical passion.
Right. He's doing something much deeper psychologically. He is issuing a philosophical warning about identity.
Yes. The profound psychological question Tolstoy is asking through Anna is this: what is the mechanical result when a human being reduces their entire existence, their entire moral framework, and their entire identity to a single romantic emotion?
That is Anna's fundamental philosophical error.
She takes all her desperate need for meaning, all her desire for human connection, and she places it entirely on Vronsky's shoulders.
It's like taking your entire life savings, your house, your retirement, and putting it all on one incredibly volatile tech stock.
Exactly.
And then just staring at the ticker every single second of the day, terrified it's going to drop a single point.
Precisely. When love becomes Anna's sole source of identity, it radically changes state. It stops being a guiding light, and it literally becomes a consuming fire.
She demands that Vronsky be her lover, her society, her religion, her intellectual stimulation, her entire world.
And mechanically speaking, no human being can sustain that weight.
It's impossible.
Vronsky is just a man.
Mm-hmm.
He has other interests. He has his career, his horses, his men's clubs. He cannot be her entire universe.
And her demand that he be so is what ultimately suffocates the relationship.
Which raises an incredibly difficult question for us to ponder. As Anna leaves her husband, as she loses access to her beloved son.
Because Karenin cruelly refuses to let her see the boy if she continues the affair.
Right. And as she becomes a total social pariah, is society punishing Anna? Or is she punishing herself?
Wow. It is a devastating combination of both, isn't it? But the true horror of her descent seems to be the internal spiritual punishment.
It is. You see, Anna still possesses a deep, inescapable conscience. She is not Steva.
She cannot just brush off her transgressions and go have a nice dinner.
No. She knows she has abandoned her son. She knows she has blown up her family. But her desire for Vronsky is overwhelming.
So when the delicate balance between her moral conscience and her worldly desires is shattered, an existential void opens up inside her.
She basically becomes a prisoner of her own mind.
She starts hallucinating, right? The psychological toll literally breaks her grip on reality.
Yes, a paralyzing fear of loss just takes over her entire cognitive process.
Because she has sacrificed absolutely everything. Her son, her reputation, her marriage,
All for Vronsky, so she lives in constant agonizing terror that his love will fade. The internal logic is brutal. If his love fades, her massive sacrifice was for nothing, and she has no identity left whatsoever.
She will just be a void.
So she projects all her massive insecurities onto him. Every time he goes to the club to play cards, every time he casually speaks to another woman, she interprets it as a definitive sign that he is abandoning her.
She creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, pushing him away with her suffocating neediness, her sudden bursts of anger, and this deep paranoia.
It's completely heartbreaking because you are watching a brilliant, vibrant woman dismantle her own sanity piece by piece.
But we absolutely cannot let society off the hook here. Tolstoy offers a scathing, surgical critique of this high society.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about the glittering balls in St. Petersburg, the trips to the opera, the endless, vicious gossiping in these drawing rooms. It's a beautiful, diamond-encrusted shell that is completely devoid of true morality.
This is a vital mechanism to understand in the novel. Society doesn't hate Anna because she sinned.
We already established that with Stiva.
Right. Society is perfectly fine with sin, as long as it is kept quiet, as long as the surface remains polished and polite.
High society hates Anna because she stopped pretending. She lived her truth openly.
She exposed their collective hypocrisy by refusing to play the game of discreet, shadowed infidelity.
By walking out into the broad daylight with Vronsky, by showing up at the opera in full view of everyone while still legally married to Karenina, she forced society to look at its own moral emptiness.
And they punished her relentlessly for holding up that mirror. They cast her out not to protect their morals, but to protect their illusion.
Okay, so on one side we have Anna. She seeks meaning purely in passion, in the external validation of a lover, and she rebels by fighting society head-on.
And she is utterly destroyed by it.
But what happens to the person who sees that exact same societal hypocrisy and, instead of rebelling with passion, decides to rebel by withdrawing completely into his own mind?
We find Tolstoy's counter-narrative.
Exactly. We move to the other major axis of the story. Konstantin Levin.
If Anna's journey is a rapid descent into the inferno of unchecked passion, Levin's journey is the agonizing, slow, stumbling climb towards spiritual clarity.
Levin is widely considered to be Tolstoy's autobiographical alter ego, right?
He is. He is the character through whom Tolstoy wrestles with his own deep philosophical and religious demons.
Let's set the stage with Levin. Levin is a wealthy landowner. After a lot of heartbreak, he eventually marries Kitty.
Now, Kitty is fascinating because she initially rejected Levin's proposal.
Because she was infatuated with Vronsky.
Exactly. But Vronsky, of course, dropped her the second he laid eyes on Anna.
So Levin gets the girl he loves. He has vast amounts of agricultural land. He has immense wealth. He is young and physically incredibly strong.
By every single metric of 19th century success, and honestly 21st century success, he has won the game of life.
Yet he is suffering from a massive, silent existential crisis.
He is plagued by the ultimate crushing philosophical questions. Why do I live? What is the purpose of all this effort, all this wealth, all this love, if it ultimately just ends in death and nothingness?
Have you ever had that feeling where you achieve a massive goal? Like maybe you get a huge promotion, or you finally buy a house, or you graduate with a degree you spent years working for.
And you wake up the next morning, look around and think, is this it?
I feel entirely hollow. That is exactly where Levin is sitting. It's basically the 19th century version of modern burnout.
It is the terrifying crisis of having it all and realizing that all isn't enough to satisfy the human soul.
And Levin, being an intellectual, tries to solve this spiritual problem using his brain.
He engages deeply in the ideological struggles of his day. He reads German philosophy. He debates the Slavophile movement.
Let's break down the Slavophile movement for a second, because it's a huge part of his intellectual journey. What exactly was he debating?
Well, the Slavophiles were a group of Russian intellectuals who argued that Russia should not copy Western Europe.
They wanted to stay true to their roots.
Right. They believed Russia had a unique, superior destiny rooted in the rural peasantry, the Russian Orthodox Church, and the traditional village commune.
And they completely opposed the Westernizers.
Yes, the Westernizers wanted Russia to rapidly industrialize, build factories, and adopt European liberalism and scientific rationalism.
So Levin dives into this. He writes massive treatises on the ethics of agricultural reform, trying to find a perfect, rational system that balances his wealth with the labor of the peasants.
But the intellect entirely fails him.
Right. All these abstract debates in smoky intellectual salons in Moscow, all the treatises he writes, They provide zero comfort when he's alone in the dark with his thoughts.
You cannot think your way out of an existential crisis. The brain just spins its wheels.
Intellectualizing the meaning of life only distances him further from actually experiencing it.
He is trying to map the territory without ever walking on the ground.
So well said. And the profound turning point for Levin isn't found in a book or in a debate with a Moscow intellectual. It's an encounter with a peasant on his estate named Fyodor.
This scene is vital. Levin is out in the fields, deeply frustrated with his life and his intellectual failures. He's working alongside the peasants, physically harvesting wheat.
And Fyodor, a man with zero formal education, no wealth, and no social standing, possesses something Levin desperately wants.
A profound, simple, unshakable faith.
Fyodor casually mentions in conversation that a man must live for his soul and remember God.
It's a simple phrase, but it triggers a moment of profound clarity for Levin.
The mechanism of his realization is this. Meaning is not something you construct through abstract, top-down intellectualism.
It's not a puzzle to be solved by the brain so that you can finally relax. Meaning is generated through practical, active goodness.
It's in the doing, it's not in the thinking.
Yes, in the doing. It's found in daily physical labor, in a direct connection to the earth.
In the immediate, tangible act of helping your neighbors.
And in a humble acceptance of the natural rhythms of life, Levin realizes that you don't need a grand, world-changing philosophy to live well.
You just need to act with kindness and integrity in your immediate, highly localized surroundings.
But Tolstoy doesn't just let Levin have an epiphany and walk off into the sunset.
No, this new realization is severely tested by the harrowing reality of death. We have to look closely at the scene where Levin's brother, Nikolai, is dying of tuberculosis.
Levin is terrified of death. It paralyzes him.
But the text shows that for Tolstoy, death isn't just a tragedy to be avoided or feared. Death is a teacher.
Death is the ultimate, inescapable lens through which we must understand the value of life.
Let's look at the mechanics of that hospital room scene. It is visceral. The smell, the physical decay of Nikolai's body, the horrific sound of his coughing.
Levin walks into that room with all his abstract agricultural theories and his philosophical debates, and he realizes instantly that none of it matters.
Philosophy cannot save his brother.
When Levin watches Nikolai suffer and eventually pass away, it strips away all societal pretense. It forces Levin to confront the raw, undeniable biological reality of mortality.
And what does that confrontation actually do to his new philosophy?
It solidifies it. In that confrontation, Levin realizes that true faith isn't about memorizing dogma or participating in empty church rituals to look good in front of society.
True faith is a deeply personal, experiential relationship with life itself.
You only truly understand life's value and the necessity of being kind in the present moment when you fully and deeply accept that it will end.
Okay, so we've got the internal philosophies mapped out, Anna's external passion versus Levin's internal quietness.
The two main axes.
But what blew my mind going through this material is how Tolstoy encoded this entire philosophy into the physical, material world of the novel. He didn't just write out his theories in dialogue, he built them into the environment.
Yes, the use of environmental symbols in Anna Karenina is masterful. It is not just set dressing.
Let's explore the symbolism of determinism, because the most famous, the most pervasive, and the most terrifying symbol in the entire novel is, without a doubt, the train.
Right. It's not just a convenient way to get characters from Moscow to St. Petersburg.
The train is a monster. It's this cold, iron manifestation of modernity, of rapid industrialization, and ultimately of inescapable fate.
The train represents the rigid, unstoppable tracks of societal norms. The mechanism is clear here. You cannot argue with a train.
You cannot ask a train to change course because you are in love.
If you stand in its way, it will crush you without malice and without hesitation.
And Tolstoy foreshadows this brilliantly right at the beginning of the novel. When Anna first arrives at the train station in Moscow, which is the exact moment she meets Vronsky for the first time, a railway worker is accidentally crushed to death by a train backing up.
And Anna immediately, instinctively calls it a bad omen. I mean, talk about a flashing red light.
But let's dig into the philosophical theory behind this.
There is a heavy Schopenhauerian undertone here. The German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer, who Tolstoy read extensively, wrote about the will.
This blind, irrational, ceaseless striving force that drives the universe. Wait, hold up. I need to challenge that interpretation right there. Because if Schopenhauer says the universe is driven by this raw, irrational, passionate will, wouldn't Anna's passionate, destructive affair actually be the ultimate expression of that will.
That's a good point.
Why is the train the symbol of fate here? The train is a calculated, engineered machine. It feels like the exact opposite of blind passion.
That is a brilliant distinction to make, and it gets to the heart of how Tolstoy adapts Schopenhauer's philosophy.
How so?
For Schopenhauer, the individual human will is constantly thwarted by the larger, indifferent mechanics of the universe. Tolstoy adapts this into a social context.
So Anna's passion is her individual will.
Yes, but the train represents the collective, mechanized, indifferent will of society and fate combined.
Oh, I see.
Anna's warm, fragile, human irrationality is ultimately no match for the cold, unstoppable machinery of destiny. The train meeting society doesn't care about her love affair, it just keeps moving on its predetermined tracks.
That makes total sense. And Tolstoy uses the natural environment to mirror the internal state of the characters, too.
The weather is a huge factor.
There's this incredible scene where Anna is taking the train back to St. Petersburg. She's trying to run away from her initial attraction to Vronsky.
But Vronsky follows her onto the train.
Right. And outside the train cars, there is a massive, violent snowstorm raging.
The tempest of the soul.
Yeah.
Tolstoy deliberately uses the violent weather to physically manifest the emotional storm brewing inside Anna.
The wind is tearing at the metal of the train, the snow is blinding, the cold is lethal, it's chaotic and incredibly dangerous.
But the key detail of that scene, and this is what makes Tolstoy a genius of psychology, is that even as the storm rages, Anna steps out onto the freezing platform.
She sees Vronsky in the snow, and she finds the storm to be magnificent and exhilarating.
It's the perfect metaphor. She knows this passion is incredibly dangerous. She knows it's a tempest that could freeze her out of society and destroy her life.
But she finds the sheer force of it absolutely thrilling. She willingly gives herself over to the tempest.
Which leads us to the third major symbol. And this might be the most devastating in its mechanical clarity. The horse race.
Oh man. Vronsky is an excellent horseman, and he enters a steeplechase riding his beloved English mare, Frou Frou.
This scene is agonizing to read. You can literally feel the tension in your own muscles.
It is agonizing because it's a direct, unvarnished, philosophical allegory for Vronsky's relationship with Anna.
Let's look at the mechanics of the scene. Vronsky genuinely loves the horse. He admires her beauty and her spirit, just as he loves Anna.
But in the heat of the race, his intense ambition, his vanity, and his overwhelming desire to dominate the other officers and win, it just takes over his judgment.
He loses his rhythm.
He pushes the animal too hard over a jump. He makes a clumsy, incredibly selfish mistake in his seating as they land.
And he breaks the horse's back.
Exactly. He literally destroys the thing he loves because he cannot control his own ego and his drive for dominance.
The parallel is exact. His relentless pursuit of Anna, his refusal to let her go when she's vulnerable, his failure to truly understand her fragile social position. It ultimately breaks her spirit.
He claims to love her, but his selfish drive, his masculine entitlement masked as romantic passion, is the very thing that destroys her.
To really grasp the massive weight of what Tolstoy is pulling off here, we have to zoom out and compare Anna Karenina with other titans of literature.
Right. How does this compare to, say, Gustave Flaubert or Jane Austen?
It's a very revealing comparison. Take Jane Austen. Austen is an absolute genius of social conflict and human behavior.
But she generally uses social tension for satirical, ultimately cheerful outcomes.
The social tension in an Austen novel is usually resolved by a marriage that manages to brilliantly balance genuine love with financial and social prudence.
Right. Elizabeth Bennet gets Mr. Darcy, love aligns with wealth, and the social order is maintained.
But then you look at Gustave Flaubert's Madame Bovary, which came out about 20 years before Anna Karenina.
Flaubert focuses intensely on the psychological tension of Emma Bovary, a woman trapped by a mind-numbingly boring marriage and a stifling provincial society.
She has affairs, goes into massive debt to buy pretty things, and ultimately poisons herself with arsenic. It's a brilliant, cynical psychological study.
But Tolstoy takes what Flaubert did and elevates it entirely.
While Flaubert remains somewhat detached, clinically analyzing Emma's psychology as a flaw of romantic reading and boredom, Tolstoy elevates Anna's affair into a sweeping spiritual and ethical treatise.
How does he do this? By counterbalancing her with Levin.
He doesn't just show us a woman failing. He shows us an entire society failing. And then he offers a deeply philosophical alternative through Levin's search for God.
Tolstoy isn't just asking, why did she cheat? He's asking, what is the ultimate responsibility of the human soul to itself and to others?
Which brings us to the heaviest, most unavoidable part of this discussion, the ending.
Anna throwing herself under the train. It's shocking, it's visceral, but mechanically, based on everything we've discussed, it is entirely inevitable. Why must it end this way?
To understand the mechanics of her suicide, it really helps to apply a sociological lens. In 1897, the French sociologist Émile Durkheim published a foundational study simply called Suicide.
Right, and in it, he explored a paradox. Suicide rates actually rise in wealthy, stable societies that lack spiritual cohesion compared to poorer societies bonded together by shared crises or external struggles.
Durkheim called this state anomie.
Anomie, a condition of instability resulting from a breakdown of standards and values or a lack of deep purpose.
It's what happens when you have everything material but nothing spiritual holding you together.
Precisely. Let's apply the mechanics of anomie to Anna's daily routine in those final chapters in Moscow. She is living in luxury.
But her reality is entirely untethered. The society that surrounds her offers absolutely no spiritual consolation. It only offers judgment and isolation.
She cannot go to the theater without being insulted. Her husband, Karenina, cares only for maintaining appearances and cruelly refuses to grant her a divorce that would legitimize her and let her see her son.
And her lover, Vronsky, exhausted by her constant paranoia, her jealousy, and their social isolation, is beginning to pull away to his own separate life.
She is completely untethered. There is no social net, no familial net, and no religious net to catch her.
And most importantly, her own internal conscience, the knowledge of the destruction she has caused, cannot be quieted.
The anomaly is absolute. She has no framework left to give her life meaning.
So she goes to the train station, the very place she first felt that spark of doomed passion, the place where the worker was crushed, and she literally lets the cold iron machinery of fate crush her.
It's the ultimate horrifying physical manifestation of being crushed by the unstoppable weight of societal norms.
It is devastating. But it's crucial to remember that the novel does not end with Anna's death. Tolstoy deliberately gives us a dual ending.
Yes. We get the tragic resolution for Anna. And we also see a ruined Vronsky.
He is left entirely empty, funding his own military expedition, heading off to war in Serbia, basically looking for a socially acceptable way to commit suicide. He is a hollow man.
But contrasted against this absolute devastation is the quiet victory of Levin.
And it's not a triumphant fireworks victory. Levin doesn't figure out the grand unifying theory of the universe.
It's a quiet, internal peace.
It's Tolstoy's final, complex philosophical statement. Life is not a simple binary battle between pure good and pure evil.
Life is a battle between being lost in endless, selfish reactions to our desires and societal pressures versus living with clear, conscious, humble intent.
At the end of the novel, Levin doesn't solve all the world's problems. He still has doubts. He still gets angry at his servants. He still argues with his wife.
But he finds a way to live with profound purpose by anchoring himself in simple, active goodness. He stops trying to solve the universe and starts trying to be a good man in his own house.
Okay, let's bring this all together. What is the ultimate takeaway from this massive, brilliant architecture of human psychology?
Anna Karenina teaches us that human beings are incredibly fragile ecosystems. We cannot survive on desire alone. That burns us up like Anna.
We cannot survive on intellect alone. That leaves us hollow and paralyzed, like the early version of Levin.
And we certainly cannot survive on societal approval alone. That turns us into hypocrites, like Stiva or Karenina.
When we look for our identity entirely in the eyes of others, whether it's the adoring eyes of a lover or the judging eyes of high society, we vanish. We lose ourselves.
But when we look inward with humility and commit to active, practical goodness in our daily mundane lives, we find an anchoring light.
It's a profound synthesis. I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over today, something that takes Tolstoy's philosophy and places it directly into our modern laps.
Let's hear it.
We've talked deeply about the weight of societal expectations and the sheer terror of narrowing your identity down to a single romantic connection. But think about the modern paradox of choice.
Like dating apps.
Exactly like dating apps. Levin was paralyzed by having too many philosophical choices, too many grand ideas about how to live.
And today, we have the illusion of infinite romantic choices right at our fingertips.
We swipe endlessly, searching for the absolute perfect, idealized passion, an Anna and Vronsky spark.
But in constantly searching for the perfect ideal, we often fail to cultivate the humble, active, localized goodness that Levin discovered.
We become paralyzed by the algorithm of choice. Tolstoy forces us to ask, in our relentless modern search for the perfect passion, are we actually just avoiding the quiet, difficult, daily labor of building a meaningful life right in front of us?
That is a terrifying and necessary question to ask yourself. Are you searching for a spark that will burn down your life, or are you willing to do the daily labor of tending a quiet fire? We want to warmly thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Anna Karenina.
It's been a journey.
We really hope it sparked something for you, and we encourage you to step out of the abstract today and find your own practical balance between the mind and the heart. See you next time.